Hello, hello, hello. Hello! Hello! Hey! All right. It's the last session of today, and we've got such an awesome guest today. We're going to have Mr. Don Letts interviewed by Justin Turford. He's going to talk about all his adventures throughout cultures, genres, documentaries, music, bands. I can't wait to listen to it. But before we begin, please share your experiences this week with a hashtag IW22 on Instagram. You can win £50 worth of Amazon vouchers. Emergency exits there and there, okay? And also, tomorrow, a lot of the music sessions are on Zoom. So please check your Confetti emails for your login details, okay? So you're not using your personal emails, you're using your Confetti emails to be able to get into Zoom. All right, is that covered? So, also you can check out some of last year's sessions. So remember, we had Suzanne Rogers, who was Prince's engineer. You can watch all that stuff on the website from last year on the on-demand section. So do that if any of those sound interesting. But without further ado, let's do it. Don Letts, interviewed by Justin Turford.
Too comfortable, this. Damn.
It is too comfortable. Look at this. Whoa, look how many people are in here. Good afternoon, everybody. I think you know who this is, but let's...
Hold on a second. How many of you know who I am? Oh, I'm surprised. All right, fuck. All right, I'm touched. I'm touched. I mean, you were all sperm when I was doing my thing, so I'm touched that you know who I am.
So for those who don't know...
You're about to find out.
You're about to find out. This is a Rebel Dread. This was a fashionista originally. Film, well, kind of. Fashion...
Style icon.
Icon, yeah.
No, I was just a stylish dude that they gave these silly names to. But fashionista, ugh.
Oh, no, well, it's a terrible word, but kind of was at the time. DJ, filmmaker, and cultural talking head these days. Cultural historian in lots of ways, because...
You're being so cruel.
Oh, I'm not being cruel. It was only because you're the only person with a camera at certain points, wasn't it? So
True.
Yeah,
and taste, because I was filming the right bands.
You were filming the right things as well. What, moments of, like, counterculture history. So, but mainly, just to flatter you a bit more, you are a very uniquely British creator, is the way I think of it. You come...
You can say that, I can't.
Well, of course, yeah.
I'd
You
be
don't
a
have
dick
to.
if I said that.
Yeah, but you are... You've done a lot.
I'm old. It's been really horrible to me, isn't it?
I'm not that much younger. You've done 2 autobiographies. You know you're busy when you've done 2 autobiographies. This is the second one, which I recommend. You're going to pick this up in rough trade. And I'm trying to think of where we start here. This is... A lot of things happened to you in a very short period of time in the mid-70s, where you went from working in a shop where you met pretty much all the key people of the future punk situation, and it was from there that they asked you to DJ, and from all there, that's how you became a filmmaker. So, how did you end up in this place? Were you were searching for something, weren't you?
Fuck. I can do that. I can do that. Okay. I'm what you call first generation British born black, which I guess kind of rolls off the tongue now, right? But in the 60s and 70s, it was a really confusing concept. We were kind of looking for clues looking to America for clues, but we obviously weren't American. We're looking to the land of my parents' birth, Jamaica, but I wasn't Jamaican. I was something new, this black British thing. And I guess we were kind of running around like headless chickens, trying to work out where we fit in. And that was really facilitated by music. Particularly the reggae at home that my parents had brought from them. They're part of the Windrush generation.
I mean, your dad had a small sound system.
Yeah, a small sound system. And then, so I've got reggae coming in this year. But at school, I'm listening to what my white mates are checking. I'm digging the Stones, the Kinks, the Who, stuff like that. And it was through, I guess, the understanding of our differences that made us closer. Do you understand? Rather than us trying to be the same.
Yeah.
So we were turning each other on through our respective culture.
And this is something that I kind of recognise that you've done throughout your career. It's just you name your radio show on BBC Six.
Culture Clash, absolutely.
But the culture clash is the key kind of term through a lot of what you've done throughout.
Yeah, I guess what was different about me is, unlike a lot of my other black brothers, I was kind of being turned on by the things that were going on around me. I wasn't prepared to be defined by my colour. Yeah. If I like that Led Zeppelin riff, I'm going to put my hand up and say, look, I like it. I don't know why. And I've always tried to remain open to all the world has to offer, especially if it's got a good bass line.
That's right. Yeah, you're well-documented lover of bass. There's a lot of documentaries out there. This is all around... So you meet all the punks. You're working in this very cool shop called Acme. In fact, you're managing it, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah.
With Jeanette Lee, who went on to be... She's currently...
co-owner of Rough Trade, the label.
Yeah, right. But in this shop, you're meeting the future punk generation. And why were they coming there? It was because of the music you were playing and your style and your attitude.
I mean, people would come into my shop for one of three reasons. Either to buy some clothes, sort of the retro things we were selling, or to speak to Jeanette, who was kind of easy on the eyes back then and still is. But primarily, they'd be drawn in by the bass lines of the dub reggae I was playing. And going back to what I was saying about turning each other on through our cultures, there was a tradition of white working class kids digging black music for their fix of rebellion, right? In the 50s, that would have been R&B from the States. But by the time I was growing up with my white mates, you've had my mob move in from the Caribbean. So my white mates are hearing reggae all around them in Brixton, in Nottingham, and places like that. And so bonds were formed before that kind of punky reggae thing happened through the music. And it was their attraction to Jamaican music that forged our friendship. The likes of Johnny Rotten, as he was known back then, Joe Strummer and all that. It was their love of Jamaican music that, made us become friends.
Yeah, and you ended up, Can
I stand up?
Of course you can.
Sorry, guys. The chair's really uncomfortable.
Do you mind if I sit down?
Yeah, go on.
No, it's all right. And what I mean about this concentration around this period is like you do the shop, then as the punk thing starts really smashing in, you are the first DJ at the Roxy, punk
but you know what? Can I just pull you out there? Because really what we should be talking about is why that punk thing happened.
Okay, then.
We should really examine the social, cultural and economic climate of the late 70s, which was fucked. 3-day weeks, massive rise of the National Front. And as Johnny Rotten so eloquently said in that song, Anarchy in the UK, sung in that song, there was a feeling of no future for young people.
Right.
But, it wasn't an admission of defeat. What it was John saying, look, if you don't get your shit together, you're going to have no future. And that's why they came up with a soundtrack that was of the people, for the people, by the people, punk rock. And the reason I'm mentioning all this is I look at the social, cultural, economic and political climate right now, and I'm wondering where that reaction is, because a lot of the great musical movements are created by the cultural are informed by the cultural climate of the times.
Right.
And it seems to me, the way that, I feel for you guys. The way things are going, you're going to be living with your parents till you're 30. And it's hard to be a rebel, man, if your mum's doing the washing up. You know what I mean? So I do empathise, but I do think you all got to come up with a serious soundtrack that'll help move you forward,
Yeah, in some ways it's kind of already happening, isn't it?
The reason I interrupted you is I get fed up with talking about shit in the past. The only reason to talk to you about stuff in the past is it can help you move forward, all right? So when you're getting bored, just put your hand up and go, boring, right?
So then, based on that, your advice for these guys is, what was the main punk ethos? Doing it yourself, getting up, doing it.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that whole DIY thing, because people talk about punk rock, it's like mohawks and safety pins. That's all bollocks. It was never about that. That was stuff that was pushed on by the media. What punk rock was an attitude and a spirit that can inform whatever you do. And if you understand that, you'll realise it ain't something for you all to look back on. It's something for you to look forward to, right? All you need is a good idea and the motivation. Trust me, because that's what I recognized when the punk thing exploded in '77, and it made me who I am today. You know, it was about turning problems into assets. It was about using what you got to get what you need. It's about a good idea attempted is better than a bad idea perfected. And in the 21st century, there's a lot of fucking bad ideas, man, I can tell you. Damn. Anyway, go on. I've gone a rant now, tell me.
Well, musically, there is a lot of DIY punky type stuff. Now, I mean, you could say grime came through.
Absolutely.
Through this. Dubstep's come through like this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
It just...
I'll tell you what I don't get, though, is why they haven't seemed to informed all the other mediums like punk did. I mean, one of the reasons we keep talking about punk rock, because it drives me nuts, is that it was a very complete subculture. It wasn't just a soundtrack.
No.
You know, people often said that, you know, when the Pistols or Clash played in any town, the next day hundreds of bands would spring up. And it's kind of true. But also, a lot of people left those gigs with that energy and it informed whatever they did. So you had punk rock poets, writers, photographers, filmmakers, fashion designers, graphic artists. And I don't see any of those other things that have happened since being that complete, you know.
Yeah, but do we think maybe that's because, you know, like, for example, you were one of the very few people who were able to get hold of a camera and document that scene. If you hadn't done it, there may well be no documentation of 1976 and that kind of period. Whereas now, every single person in here is a potential filmmaker. So people...
So where's the radical cinema?
Well, maybe they have to keep the that's true. Maybe, but they have to keep their kind of radicalness in terms of what they want to look like and things within, and they bring it out in the music or in something else. You think they're under a different pressure these days?
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, I feel for you guys. I mean, I can't talk about Nottingham, I don't live here. In London, it's become an economically walled city that's basically saying, if you ain't got money, fuck off. You know what I mean? And that's why I think the punk spirit and attitude will serve you well. You're going to need it going into the future. It's tough. It's going to get tougher too. But I do think that, you know, I'm an optimist. I do feel, you know, the young people will find a way with that spirit and that attitude. Because it's like the Force in Star Wars, man. You can't stop it. It might get lost sometimes, but I do believe it will come back to the fore. I mean, I think one of the biggest differences, I've got to say this, is that in my day, and this might sound a little naive, we got into all this stuff because we felt it was anti-establishment.
Right.
You know, and if you fast forward to where we are now, it seems, not all, but a lot of people get into these things, film, music, whatever, to be part of the establishment. You know, back in my day, you know, the whole association with brands was like something... I was going to say something really rude then, and I don't want to do that. And now, you know, the whole thing with brands is like a badge of honor. I mean, in my day, it used to be cool to say, I'm with the band. Now it's cool to say, I'm with the brand. You know, and I'm not immune to that stuff because I've been doing a bit of that now. I've lost my train of thought. Go on.
Yeah, what you mean was people did this to be anti-establishment, whereas
and now people get into it to be part of the establishment. Not all of them, you know, but the minute, listen, I'm telling you, if you... Going into the future, it's all about new values. If you want what the man's offering, I think you're kind of screwed. The minute you say, you know what, bugger that red carpet, I don't want to be on the MTV Video Awards, things like that, the world becomes really exciting. You might not earn as much, but you'll be able to hold your head up, get your shit out there, and maybe earn a crust. You know what I mean? It's all about new values.
I think the difference, though, compared to the 70s and the 80s was you could live in a squat. You could get some money off get some money from the government, and they wouldn't bother you at all. And you could just plug away being a musician, recording, or a filmmaker, and you could just do it on your own terms for a long time. Whereas now it's impossible.
That's right.
They don't have this.
It's like they've pasted over the cracks in the pavement, and no flowers can grow. You're absolutely right.
So now with the brand idea that people are having to search for is because that's in some ways the only sustenance that they've got.
Guess what? As I said, I'm not immune from those relationships. And a lot of my things lately are funded by brands. And to be honest with you, it's kind of cool because they're more honest than the record companies.
Yeah.
You know, the brands are they're hip to this thing, what do they call it? Cool by association, where they'll give you the money to do your thing. And they also recognize that it ain't cool to have their logo everywhere because you young people are hipper than that. So, like I say, quite a few of my last 3 or 4 films have been funded by brands. So, yeah, I'm good with it. But it's not my drive. Do you get what I'm saying? I don't want to wear a Coca-Cola badge.
No.
You know.
who wants to wear a Coca-Cola badge?
You'd be surprised,
Yeah,
dude.
there's loads.
You'd be
I know
surprised
there's
how
loads
people
in
like,
there.
I got my track in a Coca-Cola advert. Mind you, that could make you a lot of money, innit? Jesus. Anyway, sorry.
That's all right.
It's a dilemma, isn't it? I mean, what would you do if Coca-Cola offered you $500,000 for your track? You know. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, take it. So finish your tracks. Make sure there's a fizzy sound in it somewhere. So you don't want to talk about the past, so...
No, if it can help these guys move forward, I'll gladly do it.
Well, let's talk about maybe some inspiring people then, who you've met and you've become friends with. For a short period, you were friends with Mr. Bob Marley, were you not?
Are you fucking with me? No, hold up a minute. I just said to you, joking aside, I don't mind talking about shit as long as it helps these people move forward. And now you've just asked me about being friends with Bob Marley.
Well, no, I do, because he was somebody who was an inspirational guy, whose attitude is maybe still strong today.
Okay, I mean, what helped me move forward with my association with Bob Marley wasn't meeting him at all. It was the music that he put out before I had anything to do with him.
Right.
You know, albums like Catch a Fire, we're running around in London looking for a soundtrack. Bob comes up with this stuff that's kind of really political and seems to translate perfectly from the streets of Kingston to London, and that was really empowering for me. So it wasn't really necessary for me to meet Bob. In most cases, it's the worst thing you can do. You know, what Bob had to give to the world was his music, and we can all access that, right? Sorry, but I just had to.
No, that's all right. That's all right. Well, I better just.
And I was lucky enough to meet him.
Well, I just need to get
sold
rid of
him
all
weed and
these
this
questions
shit,
now.
You ain't going to get to do that. I mean, you know, really. And that's just what I'm saying. You don't need to. This is the important. You don't need to meet people. You need to get your own shit together, man. You know.
Okay, all right. Well, here's another example then of total DIY attitude and coming down to attitude.
Yeah.
When you become a pop star of sorts without being able to play an instrument.
Okay.
With big. So, anyone heard of Big Audio Dynamite? So after the Clash split up, Mick Jones set up a new band with Don, and who was the other friend? Was it
Irrelevant.
Irrelevant?
Irrelevant. That's his name.
That was his name.
But no, I'll tell you. Okay, well, I'll tell you what's interesting about this story. Good. So Mick Jones gets kicked out of the Clash, starts this new band, Big Audio Dynamite. One day I'm in a club with him, and there's me and my other Rasta man friend and Mick in the middle, and he says, we look like a band. And I'm like, Mick, I can't play anything. And he's like, don't worry about that, nor could Paul when he was in the Clash. They put stickers on his fret so he could play. Difference between me and Paul was I never took the stickers off my keyboard. But I knew that I had to contribute to this band. You know, I think it's really important that if you're in a situation, you justify the space you occupy. You know, otherwise you're baggage. So I couldn't play anything. So I threw myself into doing this sample and dialogue stuff. I was stealing samples and dialogue from films because I wanted to contribute. It wasn't enough to just look good. But I quickly realized you don't get paid for stealing shit, other people's shit. So I started writing lyrics. And with Mick's help, I co-wrote 50% of the stuff. Right. And I guess the point is that I think what's always got me through is my belief in the idea, in the content. You know, the technical ability, I've never been good at any of that. I'm technically crap, but I'm a believer in the content, the ultimate idea, the essence of the idea. And that's what I've always focused on.
Yeah, we were talking about this in the backstage, weren't we? About a lot of you guys have no idea about the technology, for example, that Don would have to do with sampling. I mean, the level of basic that we had to use. But as you were saying, all of that stuff is just a conduit. The main thing is the idea. Yeah. The idea changes. You know, you're from the digital age, the way you make music, the way you advertise your own events or whatever is so different to what we did. But it's the idea that counts, isn't it?
Yeah, that will always win through. The idea is always stronger than the technical ability, but the understanding of the technical ability will make the idea stronger. So it's not to be knocked. You know?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great example is you've got this brand new film out, which some of you going to go and see it at Broadway later. Later. But I mean, when you started off, you literally did the so-called the punk rock movie with a Super 8
Super 8
and
camera.
no idea what you're doing. You didn't even know you were making the film until...
No, he's absolutely right. I was filming all these bands, filming the stuff that was turning me on, and then I read in this music paper, Don Letts is making a movie. He's making a punk rock film, and I thought, that's a good idea. I'll call it a film. Stuck it together, and that was my first entrance into the film business. And then when some of those bands got record deals, and we'd become friends by then, they turned around and asked me to have a go at making their videos, and that was really my training.
Yeah, I mean, you did... But that was kind of really at the birth of video promos as well, and yet you were with some of the most underground bands, weren't you?
You know what I just realised? That wasn't the beginning of my training. You know what the beginning of my... And this is relevant. You know what my training was? The price. Back in my day, right, Super 8 film, they came in cartridges, 3 minutes long.
Yeah.
With processing, cost about £20. This is in 1977. Anybody good at maths? What is 20 quid in 1970? What's it, about 200 quid now? Yeah. Right?
You could buy a house for £20
Yeah,
in
exactly.
1977.
But that price bracket is the thing that made me get my art together in a weird way. Because if I was going to film something, I had to make sure it really counted. So what I'm saying is, yeah, it was like having less that made me more creative. You know, if I could buy 20 gig of memory and just hose things down, and maybe I wouldn't have got my craft together. But it forced me to be very precise in what I was doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, you can't waste time or money.
Thank you.
So if you're looking through the camera, you're going, is that worth it? Well, it's like if you got, it's like if you got a digital camera compared to a film camera, it's like you could take 1,000 pictures in a day.
And then you pick the one after. You know, back in my day, was it on a roll of film? Is it 20 and 36 exposures, right?
Yeah.
That focused you, and I think you need that focus. I think the digital age has killed that as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's advantages to the digital stuff because the speed at which you can upload, but then you have the issue of how would you edit? How do you edit so many pictures down to one, defining, kind of moment? And you did this quite a lot with a lot of things, especially the early days, I think. If you go on YouTube, there's, I think it's called the Kino Library, isn't it? It's a really, really great open source recording. It's very often like soundless, just film from the past.
It's actually an archive library.
It's an archive library, yeah. And there's loads of that Don took at like the Notting Hill riots, the punk days, and sometimes just street scenes and everything. Amazing stuff. And so you went on from making this the punk rock movie, and you ended up doing, how many films have you done now?
Videos.
Well, pop videos, you've done about 400, haven't you?
Yeah, the truth is it's more like 350, but the press, they round everything up. It's still a lot. I made all the Clash videos for Bob Marley, Pretenders, Elvis Costello, Pass the Duchy, which I'm really proud of, Musical Youth.
Yeah.
And so on. In fact, I made one, here's something that's interesting. I made one last week for a band called Dread Zone.
Who are friends of yours?
Yeah. They used to be in Big Audio Dynamite. iPhone 13 and a gimbal, and it fucking rocks.
Is it
it's on YouTube.
Is it that Scary track?
That's it.
Oh, I got sent that the other day.
Yeah, iPhone 13. I ran around with that. I was lovely. I loved the punk rock approach of that. I didn't have to have a crew. Could just have an immediate idea and do it. And it was actually quite cheap because using gig, a hard drive, It was a trip. So it's on YouTube now. You can see it.
Oh, nice. But then you also...
Cost about 100 quid, that.
Blimey. Well, iPhone 13's cost more.
And that was just the food bill.
So what else? I mean, then there was a point where you decided to focus on actual films, though, wasn't it? Documentary films, especially.
Yeah, I mean that was when MTV got into the mix. All of a sudden, they got choreographers and stylists, and if you were ugly and fat, you were fucked. If you couldn't dance, you couldn't get on MTV. And I didn't like the way it was just going down this music for
light entertainment,
soundtrack for consumerism kind of thing. So I bailed on that for things that had a longer shelf life and justified the space they occupied, and threw myself into documentaries, made documentaries for the likes of Gil Scott-Heron, Sun Ra, George Clinton. I did one a few years ago on Skinhead that sort of struck a chord with a lot of... I've done a lot of docs. Clash one I got a Grammy for. Yeah,
the Clash. Anyone seen Westway?
No, they're too young.
They're all on YouTube. He doesn't get any...
Well, why? I'm not being funny. Why would they? The Clash, how long is this now? 40 years ago. When I was your age, I wasn't looking at shit 40 years old. you know, really, I mean, I think they need to be finding the equivalent now in the 21st century, finding their own soundtrack. I'm not, you know, and if some of the Clash stuff resonates with these guys, great, and it's a testament to the power of their music, but they need to be finding their own soundtrack. Did you listen to music from 40 years ago when you were a teenager? Were you interested? In Glenn Miller or something?
Oh, God, yeah, imagine. World War II swing music.
I'm not being funny. You all ain't missed nothing. You just got to create your own. You ain't missed nothing, man. Stop looking back. It's hard to move forward if you keep looking back. You bump into shit.
Well, you bring in a lot of new music into your radio shows and when you DJ now.
Yeah, yeah.
And your son Jet, is he still producing? Wasn't he producing?
No, he's
at
got
one
a
point?
kid and he's works in a vinyl factory, quality inspection or something.
Right. But you play, I mean, you got in there quite early on. You were interested in dubstep and...
I do like a good bit of bass, it's
Yeah.
true, but I also like a good guitar lick, you know. I'm black and British, and my soundtrack reflects the duality of my existence, man, you know.
Oh, that's very nice.
It's the truth.
It is true. But I've just got all these
Truth always
questions. I'm
sounds
not
good.
allowed to talk about your past.
No, you can, as long as it
Oh,
helps
right
these
then.
guys. You know what I mean? We don't want to be sitting there going, wasn't it great in the past? When you start saying that shit, that's when you're really old. And I'm pretty close to that anyway.
Well, here's a question just about, just a simple one, about, in your book here, you talk about Dancehall Queen as being...
Yeah, really proud of that.
That's the one that was your first ever feature film?
First feature film shot in Jamaica, inspired by seeing A Harder They Come. It's another Jamaican film, probably Jamaica's most famous film. Although I remember seeing A Harder They Come when I was like 14 years old and being struck by the power of cinema to inform, inspire, and entertain. And wanting to get into making films, but at that age, it was like a ridiculous idea for a young black kid, because back then it was an old white boys network. And it was only with the inspiration of the whole punk DIY thing that I picked up a camera and reinvented myself as Don Letts the filmmaker.
Right.
You know.
So, I mean, this is great advice to anybody in here. It's like, if you've just made a video with an iPhone 13, then half of you are music students of sorts, aren't you? Half of you are film. I mean, there's a whole industry.
Yeah, but they
here.
all knew they all know all this stuff. They know you can make a fucking great stuff. The iPhone 13, scary. You know, scary, man, for what it is, you know.
Oh, I've got an iPhone 6. And it's now
Pro, the iPhone 13. Do you know they got the iPhone 13 Pro? You can buy one that holds like a terabyte of memory. That's insane. Don't do it, because that's a lot of shit to lose. You know what I mean? So don't do it, but insane. Sorry, go on.
Okay, here's something. So here was we've been talking about Britain. But like here in your autobiography, I'm very interested about, because similar to the UK in the 1970s and early 80s, New York was a disaster zone. And out of New York was the same kind of things that happened here. I mean, probably even more things came out of New York. I mean, we had punk, disco, wild jazz stuff, and then eventually hip-hop. And you were able to witness the early days of hip-hop in New York, wasn't it? How was this?
Well, that was really interesting, because from my perspective, hip-hop was Black America's punk rock, using what you got to get what you need, 2 turntables and a microphone. And, 80 to 81, that was a trip. All of a sudden, black people, again, interesting, informed by the cultural climate of the time. The black music that was popular back then was like Earth, Wind and Fire and all this stuff, right? And it didn't reflect the mood on the street. So the brothers had to come up with a soundtrack, again, relative to their situation. Hip-hop. So that dynamic, again, you know, like I said, the music being in the culture, being informed by the conditions that it's made in, you know, that's a great example. Hip-hop.
Yeah, and you managed to get in did a load, because this is around the period where Big Audio Dynamite kind of started, so you were kind of cherry picking from the hip hop a little bit when you bring it into your music. So you had this British side, you had a bit of this New York thing going on. And again, this goes back to your whole culture clash thing, where you've cherry picked throughout.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, why not?
Why not? The world's a beautiful place. I mean, Big Audio Dynamite sound was, what was it? Shit that we like. Jamaican bass lines, hip-hop, New York hip-hop beats, and English rock and roll guitar. That's fundamentally what our sound was.
Yeah, amazing. and just stick on a little bit more just on Big Auto Dynamite. When you had your second wind, because you reformed, didn't you, in the 2000s?
Oh, yeah.
And it was a bit of a surprise to you what you ended up doing. I mean, you ended up playing Lollapalooza and Coachella, and how did this go down? You know, having this much later second wind with a band from a much earlier period. How did that feel?
Well, it's a much more interesting way of dealing with a midlife crisis. And I can't ride a motorbike. Sorry. No, it was a trip. I mean, come on. Sorry, guys. You know why I'm stumbling here? All I can hear is me waffling on about shit that I did. And I can't actually reconcile that with you actually helping you out. Do you get what I'm saying?
Well, let's ask the room then. Who's got a question for Don? That's something that might be relevant to you then.
Dude.
There you go.
Thanks, nice one. I know you have a really large record collection. I wanted to know, from having numerous inspirations from different genres, what is your favourite record to this day to still listen to, including old and new stuff?
Man, you're killing me. You're killing me. What I like listening to is new stuff. I've got this show you just mentioned, Culture Clash Radio. Every week, a third of it is brand new music, because that's what gets me out of bed. You know, for me, music ain't a job. It's not a hobby. It's my fucking life. I'm of that generation when, you know, records was our only source of information and information. So it's really precious to us. And I still operate in that mode. So if you want to hear new stuff, listen to my radio show. Yes, that was a plug. But my favorite thing, I'm a bass man. I love a good bass line. But because I've listened to, you know, grew up listening to pop music, I also like melody. I like a good hook. And I actually love the marriage of the two. You know, that's sort of my favorite buzz. Anybody else got a question that might be used to any or? Dude, go on. Yes.
I know, like, how John Peel was a very big thing for, like, a lot of, like, exposing a lot of people that weren't used to music through radio. Do you feel he did a big influence on the punk scene of, like, helping people hear it? Yeah, John Peel.
Well, not just punk people. I think everybody, again, he was like a Culture Clash dude before me. He was open to, basically, you know what I mean? He wasn't trapped by a label. So if it spoke to him, he'd play it, man. I mean, there's a lot of stuff he played that was like, over my head. I mean, to this day.
He was one of, like, the first radio DJs to play, like, prog rock, like 20-minute long songs.
That's right, and reggae as well. Yeah. So yeah, big respect. You know, if I can achieve anything like that man's done, I'll be a happy person myself. Yeah. So yeah, really cool.
Anyone else? God, there must be loads of questions. Yeah.
Hello. Do you still think it's worth giving people demos, or is that like kind of an outdated thing?
I'm glad you asked me that question, right? Because that's the old school language of my day. But another reason I'm struggling up here on stage, right, is that the landscape has changed so much in the 21st century that I almost don't recognize it. And to be quite frank with you, I said to him backstage, you've got probably more to tell me about how to survive now than I can tell you. You know, the only thing I've ever hung on to is the idea. And I still believe that will get you through. Do you know what I mean? I think, you know, a good idea will get through in filmmaking. It'll get you through bad editing, bad acting, if the idea is solid, you know. But, yeah, it's tough. I don't know what to tell you. You know, it's tough. Like I say, you could probably give me more advice than I can give you. I almost feel like an imposter up here with you guys. No, really, I'm bullshitting you. You know, I mean, what can I tell you about the digital world? I don't really engage with the whole social media thing too much. I appreciate it's part of the language that you have to use now. You know, in my day, you could put something out, and because there wasn't a million other people doing it, it stood a chance. But now there's so many people fighting for so little space that you can't just do your art. You've got to go out there and hustle it and push it and all that stuff. Yeah. And that's, yeah, that me.
But I guess with the question is, I guess with the demo thing, maybe she's going to actually give you a demo and say, can I put it on the radio?
I'll listen to one, but I realise that there's other ways now. I mean, you could say, bugger all that and go and create your own buzz, and that draws, you know, what was it? Who did that? Arctic Monkeys. Even that's old now, right? But they went out, created their own thing, and then the record companies jumped. How old is that now? It shows my age.
Oh, I think that was about 100 years ago as well.
How old are Arctic Monkeys, that whole Sheffield thing? 20. See, I don't even know anything beyond that. But I understand the dynamics of going against the grain, not chasing the same thing that everyone else is.
But again, theirs is a great example of a good idea done really directly.
Well, again, you can't hustle an idea. If you're trying to hustle a bad idea, you're going to have problems. So ultimately, you have to have a great idea and hustle it as well. And I didn't have to do that back in my day. You could rely on the good idea and somebody else hustling it. But then again, there wasn't a million people trying to do the same thing back in my day.
Yeah, that's right.
Stage is kind of full, guys. I mean, you got problems. And to be honest with you, I haven't got the faintest idea how you're going to negotiate it. I ain't going to lie. Although, except to say that, you know, everybody can't be up on stage holding a mic. And there are a lot of other positions that are kind of interesting too. You might want to examine some of them.
Yeah, I mean, creativity is just, I don't know, same with the attitude. It's a state of mind. You don't have to be this or this. You'd be surprised.
As long as you can, like I say, you know what your part is in the equation, then it's going to be all right.
Got any more questions? We've got loads.
Yeah.
Good.
So it's a bit long-winded because it's more of like a theory that I want your opinion on over here.
Okay, go on.
So obviously it's become a more recent realization that time and trends and everything is on like a 20-year cyclical cycle. And I was thinking to myself sort of as you were speaking that everyone's looking to the past for this sort of punk movement, but I think we're like about 5 years off of it, because what I'm noticing now is with social media pushing this 20-year cycle into a 2-year cycle, that we've sort of hit our post-war generation phase, especially given what's going on with like Russia and Ukraine. That's the little threat of World War III. And I think with social media and how fast these trends change, everyone's looking more towards escapism rather than shifting and changing barriers. Yeah, hence the big thing in 2015 that everyone was looking for in like nostalgia. And I was just wondering how you thought we should navigate that, being that you grew up sort of around the 60s and you were able to watch the punk movement come into light. How do you think we should move into that?
God, you got me there, girlfriend. But a start might be stop listening to old people like me. Because like I said, no shit, I think you've got more to tell me than I have to tell you, because the landscape has changed that much. I mean, you can glean ideas from the past, but, you know, your revolution is this digital stuff. Because, you know, you can't rebel against me in stylistically or with your hairdo or that, because we've covered all that, but you've got this digital age that is yours, and it will be the source of your freedom, your individuality, as long as you understand its power and you're not posting up pictures of you having fun and what you ate last night. I think we're in a state of digital confusion, but I do believe, as I said earlier, that you will find a way, you know, probably driven by things like what's going on in the Ukraine, you know. So a very good point that you raised, seriously.
It was, yeah.
Thanks. Given that you like playing new music on your radio show, a very good radio show it is, where do you source that stuff that you like to hear? Where do you go to look for various bits of music?
Like the rest of you, friends' recommendations, listening to show. I actually go to a record shop every week, and because I'm a radio, you know, I've been on the radio for 15 years. I get sent a shitload of music. Some of it, it's. You know, every week when I say play a third of my show's brand new music, it's about 10, 12 tracks. To find 10 or 12 tracks that I would pass on to you, sometimes I listen to like 200 tracks, man. You know, and the thing is, you can't just look at the cover. I mean, if they're wearing spandex and that, I'm probably sling it. But, you know, these records and demos are people's dreams. So you have to give them at least a minute.
Well, 20 seconds.
No. If it's a dance track, even more.
It is. This is the other side of the digital thing. It's easy to get promos, but once you start getting them, it's a nightmare. I mean, I do a lot of radio, and I don't do Radio 6, and I get about 20 albums a week. Can you imagine?
But you know what?
You can't fit that in, can you?
You know, but
can you imagine listening.
In amongst all that madness, there's these moments of genius that make my
always.
day. And so much of this great stuff just gets lost under the radar because, you know, maybe the dude's not good looking, he's not a fashionista, or it's not going to get the plugger headlines that week. And it's tough out there, man. There's no justice in the music business, I tell you that.
There's never been justice in the music
absolutely
business.
Right.
So
Less so now.
Anybody else? Yeah.
What would you say are some of the most common ways to doom a good idea?
What was that?
What would you say some of the most common ways to doom a good idea are? Does that make sense?
To doom
a good idea, yeah.
Doom.
I don't understand the question, doom. What is the...
Ruin it? Destroy it?
Yeah.
Probably going down the same normal route as everybody else. You know what I mean? Like I say, you've got to find your own way. Doom a good idea. I don't know, selling out for money or something? I don't know. I don't know what he means by that. Doom a good idea. Not having the passion to see it through, maybe. You know, really, and the drive. You know, and the belief. But if it's a good idea, man, it's a good idea, isn't it? It might not get through.
Yeah. Do the work, because a good idea is not enough.
That's right.
Do the work, I guess. Who else we got? Hey.
In this new film that is going to be premiering at the Broadway Cinema in Nottingham, how did you come up with that new film you was working on?
Well, to be quite honest, it's a film about me, so I didn't make it. I mean, only a dick would make a film about themselves. And I didn't even get it. When they said to me they want to make a film, I was like, look, I might be an interesting dinner guest. But there, going back to that old adage about justifying the space you occupy, I wasn't sure that I was going to fulfill my own brief.
Right.
So the producer who's here, Phil, they ignored me, made the film. And it does seem to have resonated with X amount of people. And that gives what I do meaning. And I guess that's got to count for something, man. You know.
Yeah, I mean, you've been on a few city tour, haven't you, recently this week?
Yeah, it's been like therapy.
Yeah, I'm doing a
horrible talking about yourself. It's not good for your soul.
Doing a Q&A like this every day.
Yeah, not like this one.
No, not like this one. You lot are old, much nicer and younger.
No, you know what it is? I'm going to be honest with you guys. I've been on the QA promoting my film, right? And I'm talking about the film and blah, blah, blah. And you can kind of blag it and get through and entertain. But you young people, I didn't want to bullshit you. You know, your time is too valuable and the time is too dread for me to just waffle on and do some nice sound bites. That's why I'm in my brain, it's constantly turning over. What am I telling these guys? Is it going to help them move forward? So I just want to keep saying that. That's why I've been a bit out of respect. No, seriously. You know.
We got any more questions? Because I think we're doing very well getting questions from the room, I think.
You again. Go on, sorry.
I've just noticed there's 2 Sex Pistols T-shirts in the room. One there and one here.
Sorry, my question is, like you say, people like new music nowadays and how interested you are in it, especially with your show and stuff. Do you think it's still important, because a lot of the artists I listen to, like Current Joys and Mac DeMarco, they use quite a lot of analog equipment as well as digital. Do you think it's still important today to use equipment from then and now to understand how long an album can really take or how fast it can really go?
All I can tell you about this analog v digital and all of this stuff is that there's a tendency in the 21st century for it to be all this or all that. And the truth is, the two can complement each other beautifully. I mean, you might, for instance, record your record analog, but then you might not be able to get it pressed, so you might have to distribute it digitally. Do you know what I mean? So it's not all this or all that. You can have it all. You don't need to make a decision like that. Unlike us sticks that when CDs came in, we got rid of all our vinyl. And then you realise you didn't need to, I had to buy it all back again. You know, what a pain that was. But you can't carry a vinyl collection on an aeroplane. So, you know what I mean? So it's different strokes with different, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
everything has its place, man. It all has its place.
We were actually talking again about this, weren't we? Backstage about... Because all of you generally were born, I'm guessing, in the 2000s. So, apart from the staff, of course, sorry. There's a huge difference between what people did. I mean, like, we were talking about just the equipment that you would have to use to make a film. The time lag between having to edit a film using a razor blade and tape.
You've made an interesting point there, because another thing that the digital age has done, I think, is it's killed that struggle and that pain. And that's an integral part of creativity, I think. You know, when it's too easy, I don't know, it doesn't seem to have as much depth or something. You know, I don't get... It's like, you know, the downside of affordable technology is what? Mediocrity.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It's easier to make something look professional, but not necessarily have. But this is to do with the thing to do with all of these kind of digital tools are there to help us move faster and do it cleaner, but sometimes being slow is what makes the work.
Sorry, I'm just thinking, is, you know, the digital stuff is here to facilitate a good idea.
Right.
Computers and all this digital stuff are facilitators, but they don't have ideas. And you know what the downside of a computer is? It can't tell you when an idea is shit. There it is.
I bet there's an app you can get.
No, it's impossible. You know, you need a human being for that, that chemistry. You know, just keep that humanity in the mix, and it will be all right.
Any more questions?
Oh, yeah. I wanted to ask about one of your films, Brother from Another Planet, about Sun Ra. It was really influential for me when I was a young aspiring jazz musician. I was just wondering what drew you to a figure such as Sun Ra, and what could some of our students here learn from such a figure as Sun Ra?
Well, from my perspective, I've always been drawn towards black artists that aren't defined by their colour. And from my perspective, Sun Ra was like a jazz punk rocker. Guess what? I don't even like all his music, but the sum total of the person and his influences. I mean, this brother thought he was from Saturn. It was in his passport, right? You know, I don't know if you know this. He used to press up his own records and hand draw the labels in the 50s.
All of them.
You know what I mean? So that's sort of punk rock DIY aesthetic. And that's what really attracted me to doing that film. It was the sum total of the man as opposed to his music. I mean, I like about 3 of his tracks, but he's so much bigger than that, you know? So yeah, I think that whole thing about not being defined by your colour. Same with George Clinton, you know, bringing in those heavy rock guitars, man. Not a lot of brothers were doing that back then, but that was appealing to me. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else?
Right, Don. So, you know how you were talking about your music revolution? Well, it wasn't yours, but, you know, the music revolution that was going on, and you were documenting it all.
Yeah.
You know, if that, there's a big possibility that it might happen again today. Well, not necessarily musically, but if it does happen again today, how do you think it'll come around? Like, culturally? Will it come around musically, like through film, or, you know, will it all just come together through every aspect of an artistic point of view?
Sound like a cop-out, come together for a good idea. I mean, there's all the mediums have changed, but ultimately it needs, I don't know, people coming together and working towards a common goal. Because right now everyone's sort of hunkering down in their own corner. I think that's another difference. Back then there was an element of we. Do you know, we were in like a community. I mean, there was a punk rock movement, but now everybody's like wants to be just, it's about me, not we. And that maybe hampers what could be serious schools of thought. Does that make any sense?
Well, yeah, you were
as
talking
individuals, you're not as strong as a bunch, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you were talking about your human interaction.
Sorry, I'm
and
looking at you there and your
everyone's
voice is coming out and it's like really throwing. Go on, yeah.
You were talking about your human interaction and how good it is to have someone to tell you when an idea is shit.
Yeah,
and
really.
So when everyone's being an individual, it's...
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, if Apple had been around when in the 60s, McCartney might not have met Lennon. Or do you know who these people are? Jagger might not have met Richards, because they would have been at home on their laptop, right, thinking everything they did was great. Do you understand? But, you know, yeah, you've got to keep the humanity in there. Anybody else?
Would we even recognise if something as powerful as punk was even happening? Hard to tell, isn't it? Because where would it be coming out? Which channels would it be being seen on? It wouldn't be on popular TV or...
I'll tell you another thing, and this might sound weird, but you're right about that, because there is so much of everything that nothing means anything. So you've got these little pockets of things happening, and they're all their own individual universes that can happen without any of us even knowing they exist, if that makes any sense.
And it could be over before we'd even notice
it
happened as well. So.
Yeah, you know, the digital age, man. There's pros and cons, like you said. Sorry, somebody was going to ask me a question over here. You wimped out? No. Yeah.
Sorry, was just going to say, so with the age of obviously everybody being able to just capture things on their phone with like really good quality and stuff like that, and like, you know, everybody's just on their phones and doing that with, you know, this age. Yeah. Would you say it's still worth documenting things, and like, you know, like even though there's so, like, because there's so much competition within the industry, do you think it, like, even... Yeah, do you think it's worth it? Like, still, even if you're not a big, you know, a big name in the industry, do you think it's still worth documenting over the years of your life the things that you are witnessing and stuff?
You've asked me a question that stumped me. No, really,
Sorry.
is it worth thumping? Is it worth documenting? That's interesting. What do you all think? Is it? I'd say yes, because, it could be, you might have your own particular take and be focusing on something that everyone else has missed. And for that reason alone, it's worth doing. It might never see the light of day, but, what else can you? I mean, when I did what I did, I wasn't thinking, anybody going to see it? I don't know. I had no rhyme or reason to what I did. I just did what was turning me on.
And someone just gave you a camera, so you just used it, didn't you, as well?
Yeah, but ultimately, I still no goal. I wanted to be a filmmaker, but I wasn't thinking I want to make... I just did follow... I had quite a hedonistic approach to life, just going towards things that turned me on. Luckily, they seemed to resonate with other people, and that drove me forward. Mind you, when I was doing that, there wasn't 500 other people with a Super 8 camera, And that's the battle you've got, is that, like you've just said, there's so much of everything. How do you make your voice heard, your story cut through? Guess what? I ain't the faintest fucking idea. But I feel you, girlfriend. That's all I can tell you. I ain't that... is that not woke? Is that not woke? Sorry. Listen, I'm a 66-year-old man. You got to cut me some slack. Apparently, I picked up some bad habits along the way. Anybody else?
Hiya. So one thing that I found really refreshing, actually, with you speaking is, and also really daunting, actually, I don't know if other people in the room will agree, is that we are spoken to so much, by people that did it, have experienced the industry as it was before.
Yeah.
Right? So obviously it's changing so quickly.
Yeah.
Where do we, as budding musicians, filmmakers, how do we navigate kind of not being able to get advice as such about the way things are now? Like, how do we do that?
Basically, stop listening to old people like me and make your own mind up.
Who are we listening to?
Good
each
question.
Other? Like, where do we look?
That's a good question.
Now what?
I listen to me. I don't know. I'm trying. All right, let me think. How did I get inspiration? When I was a kid, what did I do? It was through the music. But see, the music you're listening to, half of it's trying to sell you shit, so that won't do it. Like I say, I'm not going to pretend that I understand the landscape that you're living in, and I would definitely be daunted by it. Because like I say, there wasn't a million people trying to do what I did. I was an exception, and that's why I guess you're talking to me today. In the 21st century, it's hard to be an exception. Yeah. But it might start, I keep going back to the thing of having new values. That's the only way I think but it's a hard road, that, man. How are you going to pay the rent, And that's the struggle you guys have got. You're not economically free to do the things that we could do when we were growing up. Hustle and get the dole and fucking squat. The way that life is now, you're forced down this road that kind of kills your creativity, just trying to survive. And I don't know the answer to that, honestly. I'll tell you another one. Remember, you live in Nottingham, because in London, everyone wants to go to London. And I think artists have a lot more power than they recognize. You can create your own spaces of activity and interest. And if a body of artists move to an area, it will become hip and all these things that you want in London. Then the trendies will move in and then they'll price you all out and you'll have to start all over again. But it's a dynamic that exists, believe me. Artists have power if they're working together.
Yeah, collaboration.
Yeah,
this was the key around the time of punk, wasn't it?
Yeah.
A lot of collaborative energy. I mean, there's tons
there you
of
go.
talent
It's about movements, not moments. There you go. I'm getting into my sound bites.
John, I've got a question written down here. Hello, I'm over here. A student asked, this is from Tim Hills, did you ever work with Lee Scratch Perry?
Yeah, fucking right.
And if so, what was it like? What did you learn from him?
Dude, that dude was like the Salvador Dali of sound in Jamaica. Punk rock again. All his dubs. It was you that asked me, so I can talk to you. All his dubs were made on 2 4-track machines, just bouncing between the two. And, the whole sonic experiments that he created in those Jamaican studios, putting the bass center stage, the echo, the reverb, and all the rest of it, are now part of the fabric of modern music. And that all started with how little he had, not how much he had. Yeah. I guess I'm a product of that generation, that we created the stuff because of how little, not how much we had. And if we had everything that you all had, maybe we wouldn't have been so creative.
Yeah, creativity within limitations. It's limitations that can really push your creativity.
they're the pain and the struggle. I mean, that's what I said earlier.
Yeah, if you get
Although
everything
enough,
there.
But although, funnily enough, I don't believe an artist should have to suffer for their art, you know.
No.
That's a con trick. Nothing wrong with getting paid for a good idea. Anybody else?
You've inspired so many people. My question is, who inspired you?
Oh, man, how long have you got? Jesus. Who inspired
We've got
me?
25 minutes. Off you go.
Well, I want to get into names and stuff, but like I say, the music that we were listening to in the 60s and 70s, you know, a lot of it was a lot more politicized. Books, I read a lot of books. And also, because of my age, you know, I was like 12, 13, 14, 1968, and I don't know if you know, the world was kind of culturally and politically exploding. So you were driven to kind of educate yourself, you know, and also being black in the UK and suffering a lot of racism and being told that I was, you know, lesser than or a poor relation made me stand my ground, get my shit together so I could have a kind of equity with my white mates. And that came through education. You know, they're telling me, you know, your history starts with slavery and you're lucky you should be here. And I pick up a couple of books and I'm like, hold on a minute, my history predates yours, so fuck off, you know. But no, it's important because when I was at school, they made you, you know, they made you feel like you were nobody. And it's really empowering. It's, you know, it's necessary that we all have a sense of, what is it? A sense that we can bring something to the mix, you know? That we're all whole people.
Your identity counts.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Somebody over the back there? Is any of this any good to any of you? Really? Okay, no, because I wouldn't want, like I said, I don't want to waste your time. Your time is dread. And it's about to get dreader. Anyway, sorry, what was that? You know, it's funny, when I did this film, they kept saying to me, how do we engage with the young? How do we engage with the young? And my thing is, if you do good shit, the young will engage with you. I think anything else is kind of condescending, you know? Anyway, sorry, why am I just pressuring you with that? Who's next?
Hello.
Yep.
I've got a couple of questions. One specifically that links to your last one. Sort of growing up in London in the 60s, black, listening to lots of black music, black culture. Can you talk about navigating what is largely seen as a white art form of the punk movement, bands like The Clash, and give us a little bit of an insight into, because you're quite a unique individual that you've managed to link both worlds together and navigate both worlds. Has it always been as plain sailing as it comes across in this interview, or has there been any things that you've needed to consider, or has there been any sort of treacherous points along the way linking these worlds together?
Not really. I mean, the only thing I really had to suffer was all my black mates laughing at me in Brixton. You know, when I was wearing my punk rock gear, or Bob Marley cussing me off for wearing bondage trousers. But no, man, no, really, it's true. But no, I've always stood my ground because I've reveled in being an individual. Do you know what I mean? I've never wanted to be part of a herd, never wanted to find my tribe. You know, I tell you, when I was younger, right, I was fat, four-eyed, and obviously black. So I couldn't compete with the rest of the guys who were macho and drinking beer and playing football. I never did any of that shit. Never even been to a football match. So what I did was get my head together and get my, you know what I mean? So I could out-cool my white mates. You know, it's really funny. To out-cool my white mates, I just tell the girls, I don't drink beer, don't like football, and yes, I do watch subtitled films. And I was in there. But what I'm going back to... But what I'm trying to say is, navigating all that stuff was never a problem for me because I never needed the blessing of my mates or society. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
You know, so you either dug it or you didn't. It was as simple as that. You know, when I first had my Rasta mate, I used to DJ at a club called the Roxy, the first punk rock club. And when I asked my Rasta mates if they wanted a job, they all laughed at me and told me to fuck off. And then they came down and saw the girls in the untapped weed market, and they were all working down there. A week later, they were all there. Some serious cultural exchange at the Roxy.
And it's kind of there's a bit of historical confusion around the punks anyway, isn't there? I mean, a lot of them already understood reggae. They already understood dub.
I said that earlier. A lot of them had grown up. I don't know, any of you hip to the label Trojan? Yes. Okay, well they launched. I don't know if you care about this shit, but they launched in 1968. Same year, Enoch Powell made a thing called the Rivers of Blood speech. So while he's freaking out all the old white people, just like they do today, and now we ended up with Brexit. While he's doing all that, this label called Trojan launched in 1968, and it was the music of that label that captured the imagination of my white mates and really sowed the seeds for the UK's love affair with Jamaican music. And it doesn't get enough props, you know, everyone's like, Don Letts started the punky reggae party. Bollocks. I was just part of a train that had already started in 1968.
And it was huge, that stuff. And the reason a lot of that reggae stuff didn't get in the charts is just because it didn't sell in chart return shops, wasn't it?
Hold up a second. Hold up. Rewind, Rasta.
Go on.
No. Funny enough, no, 68, Trojan launched. They had their first chart in 69 with Red Red Wine. Had their first number one in 71 with Double Barrel. And from 71 to 74, they had reggae records in the charts nearly every month. There's never been a run of reggae in the charts like that, ever. So, and that was against them not being in normal charts. Absolutely. I'll tell you what it was fueled by. You might not believe this. It was fueled by the interest of the skinheads.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about the fashion version, not the fascist version that you all probably know. When skinhead started, it was a mix of white working class mod culture with West Indian rude boy culture. That's how it started. And it was a testament to the power of culture to unite the people. But then the media starts focusing on the few dickheads that there always is in any movement. That gets pushed out through the media as being what it's about. And all of a sudden it becomes this right-wing monster that it is today. That's not how it started.
No, and again, check on YouTube. Don did this really great documentary on skinhead culture, which surprised. Yeah, I mean, you really caught it. It was thousands and thousands and thousands of views.
About that for me, it's like one of the highest viewed documentaries I've had in the UK. I didn't realise that skinhead thing, you know, the fashion version, touched so many people. I didn't realise.
Yeah, it's amazing. Got any more? Oh, they're still up there.
Hi, can you still hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
So you were talking about kind of the culture of music and moving forward. Do you see some parallels in modern trap, rap and drill music to compare to what you've seen in the 70s and the DIY culture of them shooting their own videos, making their own music and kind of not being accepted by mainstream radio?
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of those things were created, you know, sort of have that DIY punk aesthetic. I just can't take geezers shouting at me all day long. But obviously it's not, you know, that drill trap, it's not for my generation. Do you get what I'm saying? But absolutely, grime, drill and trap had elements of that. You know, I think there's a little bit of mess. There's some obvious mess in there that needs to be sorted out. I mean, you know, when grime first started, it was like, what was that tune? Too many men, too many men. It was all like this and that drove me nuts. But some of them have got in touch with their feminine side, and now it becomes interesting to me. You know. But I can't take geezers shouting at me all day long.
That's
just like an age thing, you know. Anybody else?
Yeah, I've got one. Yeah. Hello.
Sorry, the reason I keep doing that is the voice is coming out of
the voice is coming down there. Yeah. So, how am I supposed to word this? There's so much that's changed in the past, you know, however long. I can't do maths.
Past week. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, there's so much that's changed in this industry, in the music industry, and there's a lot that we don't like. There's a lot that we love nowadays. If there's one thing that you could change about the music industry today, what would it be and why?
I don't know. Maybe the fact that it's an industry. You know, for me, you know, for people of colour, you know, music was never this thing, a way to get to somebody's pocket. It's an inherent part of our culture. Kids are listening, parents are listening, grandparents are listening. The minute it becomes this other thing, this capitalist venture, instead of a creative venture, then that's something else. And maybe that's what I'd like to remove from the equation, you know? So it becomes this beautiful organic thing that turns the people on and help them move forward. So yeah, maybe to get rid of the word industry.
Yeah, see it more of as like something having fun instead of it being like.
Yeah, but it sounds really naive that, because how are you going to pay the rent and move out of your mum's place, you know. So I say there's that. There's the tide of the daily life and, you know, the creative one. And it's how do you reconcile the two? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know.
Thank you.
Hiya. You were kind of saying that you felt like you didn't necessarily have a lot to teach young people.
No, yeah, I believe that, yeah.
But like, I mean, I like a lot of sort of 70s and 80s music, and I've seen a lot of like Q&As and stuff with artists from that era. And very rarely has one of them walked onto the stage and said, like, I don't feel like talking about the past because I don't think it can teach young people anything. Do you not think young people can learn something from your specific attitude and kind of state of mind in relation to stuff in the past and today?
I hope so, but what I actually said was I don't like talking about the past if it can't help me move forward. So when somebody says, you know, what was it like meeting Bob Marley, that doesn't help you in any way. That's just some ego bullshit, right? But I hope that we've gleaned a few things from some of the other questions that have come out of this. Because obviously there's things that you can learn from the past, but you just don't want to be hung up there. Or this thing, oh, I missed this, I missed that. You ain't missed nothing. You got to find your own and create your own now. That's all I'm saying. You know, and I'm just, you know, nothing comes out of a void. You know, there were things that turned me on, and I'm just trying to pass on the energy that made me who I am. Nothing more. Anybody else?
Oh my god. Hi.
Watch your teeth.
You talk about lots of cultures that you've been influenced by. How have you incorporated that into your art form?
Oh, damn. Oh, fucking hell. So I'm struggling. How do I... you got me again. I mean, I don't understand the question in a weird way. I do what I do, and I make films, and I write songs, and I do videos, and
maybe an example.
I tell you what it is. What you're asking me is to explain something that I do intuitively. And the minute I start to think about how I do it, I get all discombobulated. I don't know. I really don't know. I swear to you. All I know is if something drives me, I just throw myself in, I get it done, man. You know, I can't tell you how I do it. In fact, you'd have to tell me, look at my work, and then you tell me how it is that I reflect all this stuff in my films, my music, my lyrics, or whatever.
I find a lot with your videos, especially the kind of more pop video stuff, is like when you go into location, there's something that I spot all the time is where you bring the people in. You always care about the environment and the people that are there. So maybe there's a little bit of that.
I mean, I was going to say, I think one of the things is, again, I keep going to think about not wasting the space that you occupy. So I'm always trying to do something other than flog the record. You know, trying to get some point across, some opinion, even if it's as simple as, do you know, who knows the musical youth video, Pass the Dutchie? All it is, right? I mean, in my mind, you know, I thought, how is this video going to be seen around the world? Because I knew it was going to be on MTV. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do a postcard from London and fuck with people's perceptions of what London's about. Big Ben, changing of the guards. So I put these little black dudes from Birmingham, red, gold and green speakers in front of the Houses of Parliament. Really simple. But I imagine how somebody in middle America's like, damn, London don't look like it used to, you know what I mean? And that was my way of saying, you know, yeah, this is what England looks like in a very simple way. So I guess that's how the culture is reflected in my work, by me respecting it and not wasting the space and, yeah, trying to push things forward as opposed to just flog your shit and trying to say something, man, you know. Anybody else? You've been trying for ages, haven't you, dude? Come on, let me put you out of your misery.
How did you feel when the second wave skinheads came in and started to corrupt punk and made it like oi punk, the proper neo like Nazi sort of?
What am I supposed to say to that? How did I feel? Okay, all right. The oi thing was, sorry, excuse my French. The oi thing was bloody horrible because what was interesting about the first wave of skinheads is I could hear how my culture, and I could see how my culture had influenced them through the style of the music they played. By the time Oi comes along, it's like they've just sucked all the black out of it, and it becomes this fast and furious, angry thing that wasn't inclusive of black people at all. So obviously, I hated it, you know, somewhat obviously, you know what I mean? There weren't no love in Oi, you know. Sweaty men. Oh, God. God, horrible. Anyway, sorry, question. Bridge.
All right. So you've mentioned that you've liked a lot of bass. Who are some of your favorite reggae bassists out there? Jeez. Yes. Legend.
I guess Robbie. Oh, done that. Okay, Robbie Shakespeare, family man Aston Barrett used to play with the Wailers.
What about Flabber Holt?
Flabber Holt, you know already, so you know already. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, basically the dudes from the 70s, really, which was kind of a golden period of reggae for me. Totally organic, you know.
Oh, well, there was somebody with a mic. Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Hey up. You were talking about like loads of people using digital and like I've forgotten the word, but there's been so many bands and stuff that have come out that just all sound the same, and they all hugely dominate a genre because there's so many of them and it's hard to get above them. And some of them are just more popular than others. There's promoters like This Feeling and stuff, and they always pick the bands that sell more tickets, but they're not necessarily the best ones, and it's really hard to get above them. So,
I don't know if you come for an answer for that one, dude. That I know your problems, believe me, you know, but I ain't got the answer for you.
but I think that's the reason why people don't have any bands to resonate with, because there's so many shit ones that dominate it. There's none good for the good ones getting above them and getting these people to come. Because when I'm in a band and we play music, it's more 90s stuff, but there's so many indie bands that all sound the same that I don't even consider indie. We played to an audience at the Rescue Rooms that was basically sold out, and that was just supporting another band. And so many people came up to us and said, how come no one else is doing what you're doing? How come? And I said, there probably is. There definitely is people doing that. But why aren't they getting any exposure above them? That's what just pissed me off a bit.
Well, the record companies are not known for being brave. And that's the thing about the individual road of an artist, is it is a hard road. You know, I mean, you're not going to get picked up on like that. And the people, the A&R men and all that stuff, they're all looking for an easy gig. You know, they need results. They need to balance the books and the accountants and all that stuff. And it's become more about that than the quality of the art. And that's what you're up against. And like I say, I wouldn't even pretend to give you an answer. It's almost like you've got to come up with your own alternative economy, not economy, but music world. You know, like cryptocurrency is an alternative. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you do.
It's almost like you have to come up with an alternative. But the thing about that is, that's going to be tough. There's not going to be any immediate rewards from trying to create an alternative music community. But that's the only way it's going to change, isn't it? As long as we keep feeding that same machine, it's never going to change.
Yeah, I mean, when I speak to younger artists, my main thing is that it's so difficult to get recompensed now as a musician. You know, when Spotify won't give you anything and all these that kind of world that you live in, you might as well just be the most interesting and creative that you could ever be. There's no point being really bland, and you might as well take risks. Risks is the only way you're going to get noticed now, I think, personally.
Yeah, individuality. I mean, that's going to speak volumes. I mean, that's my advice to most people, is make sure you're individual, don't sound like anybody else. But the truth of the matter is, that could also be a big problem for you as well, because lazy record companies ain't going to see... Because in the old days, they'd have like a 5-6 year plan. Now they've got a 3-month plan, man. And if you don't balance, you know, figures ain't going up in 3 months, you're gone. You know? And I don't know, like I say, I've got no tricks up my sleeve for that one.
Anyone else?
Yeah, at the back there.
Everyone needs to push for Spotify to give you more money.
That thing, I don't know why, what?
It's outrageous.
See, there you go. Like, everybody wants to be on Spotify. That's how it survives. But The minute if everyone said no, fuck Spotify. I mean, I can't believe that. What is it like? How many? 25p or something? Less than that.
25, no, it's like 0.000 something per play.
And yet, people are still loading. The record companies are still loading. That's what I'm saying. You know, we're enabling them. Anyway, anybody else?
Yeah, over here. You know, for DJing, is there any like pointers or anything?
Who was that?
What?
Yeah, play a good fucking set.
No, I mean like for like any software.
No, I'm CDs and vinyl, man. No, I mean, listen, it's all about the selection. So I don't even know about the software. You know, I talk about Serato and Tractor, and that's like 50 years ago. Yeah, I'm not. My thing is just about the selection that I play. You know, I mean, you're talking about turntablism and all that stuff, and I'm not down with that. You again? No, let me get someone else. This dude. But listen, just because I'm sitting here, don't feel obliged to ask me shit. You know, really.
Yeah. How long would you like? Sorry. How long would you recommend someone to try and like have a career in music until we should give up?
Say that again.
How long do you think someone should try to pursue a career in
Hold
music?
on, let me say. Hold on, 1 second, guys. Now, ask the question.
How long do you think someone should try to pursue a career in music until they feel like they should give up?
Ooh. If you ask me a question like that, maybe you shouldn't have started in music in the first place, man. That's defeatist before. Yeah, can't, yeah. Sorry, man, I can't. I don't mean to be brutal, but I didn't mean to, I'm not sorry, I don't want to be horrible, but that's the truth, dude. You know, you can't go in like that. If you go in like that, you're fucked before you get off the starting line.
Don, we've got a previous question here. It said, who's the artist?
There's so many people in this box here.
It said, who's the artist that you feel like you've learnt the most from or been most inspired by?
Joe Strummer. But then these people don't know who he is. But yeah, Joe Strummer of The Clash. Yeah, he was passionate about music and believed in the possibility of music to be a tool for social change, not just selling shit. You know, we're of that generation. That's what it meant to us. And for us, it still has that possibility. But, you know, as hard as it is to see in the 21st century. All right, are we winding down?
I think we are. Should we get a couple more questions?
Yep.
Who didn't get his question? Yeah.
Right.
Over here.
At the start of your career, did you ever think you'd be like so inspiring to people and become so successful? Hello?
Sorry, yeah, so what are you saying?
I said at the start of your career, did you ever think that you'd be so inspiring to people and like become so successful as you are now?
What makes you think I'm what's successful?
Like your documentaries and stuff, like you've gotten like people.
And you said, what was it when I started my career? You see, when I started, I didn't know what I was doing. You ain't going to believe this. I still don't know what I'm doing. I don't have a career. You know, I mean, like I've just spent the last two years, year, doing my first solo album. Why? Because I just felt like doing it. No one's asked me to do it. I don't know if it's ever going to get released, but I just did it. And that's how I've lived my whole life. As I said, luckily it seems... You know what's funny is after doing this book and this film, the only real skill that I realize I have, or ability that I have, is taste. I've got to be honest, that's how I feel. Which is lucky, because in the 21st century, apparently, taste is some serious currency. But I don't feel like the person you're describing. For me, it's a work in progress. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm sitting there, I've got a book out, a film out, and I've got to kind of own it. But I was saying to somebody today that sometimes I feel, what's that thing called, imposter syndrome? Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't understand why people think I'm so clever. I don't get it. I just done some shit. Happens to be cool.
Well, as you know, innit, you never stop learning. There's always somebody you think's better than you.
Yeah, I mean, and all this stuff they say, what is it, legend and icon? I don't get any of that. You know, for me, it's a work in progress. One day maybe they'll say, oh, you're a legend, and I'll be like, yes, so what? But right now I don't feel like that, you know?
More to give.
Yeah, it's work in progress.
Right, should we do one last question? Make it a goodie.
Hello. Oh. I love your energy, and I know you were saying how you wanted to like give us information that's going to help us. I just want to know like what keeps you motivated with your work. Like, how do you stay like focused on what you're doing?
Dude, I live in London. It's bloody expensive, and I've got 2 teenage kids. Double expensive. So that's a bit of it. I know it sounds like a joke, but that's actually truth. It's like just trying to survive. And I just, the only way I feel alive is if I'm creating something. And it's also a way of me not dealing with myself, because that's another thing I've realized through doing this book and this film, is I'm always throwing myself into a project or somebody else's story, and it's a way of me not dealing with anything vaguely emotional or psychological, which means I'm not a very well-adjusted person, but, I've turned what I guess can be perceived as something negative into a creative positive. And it works for me, so I don't question it. But like I say, I'm not necessarily a well-adjusted person. But apparently people in the arts aren't.
I've never met a well-adjusted artist. So.
And I don't want to be well-adjusted anyway. It sounds like it's boring.
So there's the main advice, is don't adjust yourselves if you want a career in music and film. One more, should we do one more question and then that's it? We got a goodie. Right there.
Hello, Don. Yeah. Tomorrow is International Women's Day, and not to sound tokenistic.
In my world, every day is International Women's Day, man. No, really, another kind of insulting thing. International Women's Day, shit. Anyway, yeah, go on, sorry.
Could you speak about the role of women in your career, perhaps your mother, female influences growing up, and their influences in the music, reggae, punk, and the change of culture?
This is the last question.
This is the last. That sounds like an essay, but
no,
go on.
But let me try and do this, because somebody asked me about that the other day. They said, "Oh, you've always seemed to surround yourself with really strong women." Whoops, microphone. And I was thinking about that. What was that about? What was that about? And I'm trying to get real, trying to be honest. And when it started, I realised that it was about getting my end away. I know it sounds like a really uncool thing to say, but when you're young, 13, 14, that's sort of the forefront of your mind, what's going on in your underpants. So, so you kind of get your shit together, whether it be style or the dance moves or the music that's new, to try and attract girls. But then as I progressed, I got a bit older and I realised I wasn't comfortable in the company of men and the whole beer and football and macho thing. I found myself drawn to the energy of women beyond the obvious sexual thing. And I realised that for whatever reason, I wanted their blessing, their acknowledgement, their love. And I think that's what it's always been, because women have always ruled. Why else do you think men are such dicks? They don't want to let you know that, So, yeah, it's some powerful shit, the woman energy, man. It's made me keep my shit together and do my thing. So that's a driving force. Yeah, having the respect and love of women. Definitely.
You asked. Right then. Close with this?
Yeah, no, I was going to say, listen, I know I've been jittery on stage. I tell you what, I've been doing this promo thing, and I've been bullshitting my way around the country, talking to a bunch of adults, but I knew I couldn't get away with that with you lot, all right? So that's why I've been like... But thank you for your time.
And thank you to all of you. It's been brilliant. You asked a lot better questions than I did. Brilliant. Give yourself a big round of applause. And to Don Letts.